This chapter for me finalizes the thought process of Fujimoto, how he wants to approach Chainsaw Man Part 2, how he wants to write his story and his characters. For a lot of people, the previous chapter was a little bit too slow. There's a small percentage of people asking, where is Denji? When is he going to appear and take the reins of the story once again? But to be honest, I don't think we should expect that anytime soon, or at least if he does come back within the story, there may be a dual perspective. There is a lot of work going into Asa that I don't believe Fujimoto would want to throw away, but when it comes to how he writes stories, he's unpredictable. He could quite easily build Asa up as being this dual perspective of showing her story as well as showing Denji and kind of having them entangle with one another, but he could also just kill her off instantly. It is up his alley. It is something that he would do. However, I think there is somewhat of a caveat within there with Yuko, for example, who might actually be the person that cops the biggest bruntal force of that whole attack. Instead of killing off Asa, Yuko might be the one that gets killed off. And the more we build their character, the more we build their relationship and have this really sensitive approach to both of them, the more I feel it kind of solidifying. This is a great thing though. The way Fujimoto is writing Chainsaw Man Part 2, I absolutely adore. And I understand people aren't going to like the slow burn approach. They aren't going to like the fact that Denji's not in this story. They aren't going to like the fact that it isn't as chaotic. But it feels like to me, he's having fun. He's writing sensitive characters that are really slow and methodical and ultimately just enjoying the time they're spending with one another. There is rarely any stories that get chapters like this so often because everything is so fast paced. Everything has to engage with maximum effort towards the reader's attention every single week. And if you are leaving it on a cliffhanger, you're not going to bring them back. There's so many, I guess, algorithms and aspects of writing a manga, especially a weekly one, that goes into readers' retention. And you can easily play into it. 100%. Every author, I believe, plays into it in some way. But you'll notice the authors that don't want to play into it have chapters like this. And they're usually in an environment that not only promotes it, but allows it. Jump Plus has proven that they're open to their authors writing the story that they want to write and not trying to fall down that route of trying to adhere to readers' retention. They care about the author's health. They care about giving them breaks and allowing them to publish the chapters whenever they want at whatever length. It feels really nice. And you can see that within how comfortable authors get with writing characters and their story and action and the artistry that goes into it. There's a lot of a positive reinforcement to push the creation of the story that you actually envision and not something that's trying to follow trends or algorithms. This whole conversation that I'm having is quite literally Chainsaw Man Part 2 and what Fujimoto is doing, because this chapter is nothing special on the surface. It doesn't have a massive explosion into climatic tension, but if anything, it's super subtle, it's super sincere, it's super sensitive towards two characters kind of learning about each other, and Fujimoto spending the time to build them up in a really interesting way. It's giving them life, it's giving them identity, and it's going to be a very powerful thing when ultimately they may eventually get ripped apart from one another. This is what Fujimoto was good at, building characters up only to tear them down, or something may come in between them. And you can see that with Yuko, you can see that with Asa, but the most surprising thing is that you can see it with the War Devil. As much as this chapter is about Asa and Yuko spending time together and befriending each other, we found out about Yuko's parents being killed, which I'm more kind of inclined to believe that her father was the Stone Devil being killed by the Darkness Devil. But we also get an odd conversation between Asa and the War Devil, which to me feels somewhat odd because we're diving into the more, what I would assume, human side of the War Devil. It sounds weird when you put it like that, but there was something there that just felt very personal to the War Devil, and it comes in the form of their identity and potentially even being remembered or scared of being forgotten. I don't know the reasoning why the War Devil would want a name, but when Asa brings up the fact that the War Devil doesn't call her by her name, they get kind of weird about it, oddly quiet or even self-reflective in a way, and you can kind of just tell by the way the War Devil's positioned or the facial expressions, but also just their usage of words isn't as provocative or one-dimensional. Usually it's this, and this with the War Devil, but suddenly there's a bit of doubt, a bit of reflection, and a bit of curiosity even within their words, to the point where we actually get a name for the War Devil, Yoru. And I'm surprised it kind of went with this name because I believe it just means night, but the kanji or the specifics of it may be a lot more different. But for now, Yoru is the name of the War Devil. And I'm very curious on why a War Devil needs a name and why it wants one to begin with. It's a really nice conversation, and it helps helps build a lot of character for the War Devil as well as Asa and of course Yuko that are going hand in hand, especially because Yuko is the one that kind of triggers this, with Yoru, the War Devil, saying that the closer you get with Yuko, the guiltier you will feel, the stronger of a weapon that she will be, and that we should actually kill her, which obviously Asa does not want, which ultimately sparks this whole conversation with the War Devil with revealing their name. As much as we're building a friendship with Yuko, we're also very slowly building a friendship with Yoru, the War Devil. If I were to continue though down this train of thought with why the War Devil feels this way, theoretically it could have something to do with the fact that they're merged with humans and they obtain a portion of their vulnerability, or their emotions I should say. So basically taking bits and pieces of human traits and applying that to the devil aspect. But then again, it feels a little bit odd to tunnel it down that way, so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm positive we will see more from Yoru, more from Asa, more from Yuko, and just exploring their friendship a lot more and ultimately understand how they function. Just based off this chapter, I have an odd feeling that Yoru isn't as bad as it's kind of led to believe. The War Devil should be a monstrosity. The War Devil should have such a unlikable personality because all they care about is death and destruction, and you've definitely seen that. However, we're also starting to see more of a personality come from the War Devil. We have a name finally. We're getting a bit more subtle with how they talk and trying to understand Asa little by little. Even though it's all shrouded by death and killing and turning things into weapon, there's something else there. I'm excited but also curious with how Fujimoto wants to play into that. Do we explore it more? Do we blow it up even further? Or is it something that becomes a lot more reclusive or shelled and more so just bursts out randomly due to maybe a Chainsaw Man altercation, which, speaking of the end of this chapter, seems like is what we're tying into. So a devil attack does happen, and obviously Yuko and Asa are in public, and it basically happens right in front of them. A lot of people get killed by the Bat Devil. Now we find out that Yoru cannot actually take over Asa's body forcefully when she's stricken with fear. That's quite a odd disadvantage to have. I feel like odd is such a prime word to use, I just don't know how else to explain it. Everything just feels off with this chapter, and not in a bad way, but more so when learning more and more about how these devils functions, or how hybrids functions, or even fiends function, and specifically a horseman. So for some reason, and one that's rather fitting as well, what empowers devils to begin with is also the reason why the War Devil cannot enter the human body, or at least forcefully take over it. I'm curious if Asa could give control, or if there could be more of a solid contract in place to allow it to be possible. So for now, Asa and Yuko are unprotected and the War Devil can't do anything, and they're running away. They're about to get obliterated by the Bat Devil. But it seems like a prime opportunity for Denji or the Chainsaw Man to actually make their entrance, which to me would make the most sense. Or Yoshida could also be in the vicinity, which he was absent from school, so you never actually know. But this could also link to the final chapter of Chainsaw Man Part 1 with Denji in school uniform turning into the Chainsaw Man Devil and fighting something. We don't know what that something was, but this might be a great way to link it in there and ultimately have Asa, Yuko, and Denji's first interaction. Or they may notice that Chainsaw Man is wearing the same school uniform, and then it turns back into that detective route of finding out who is who. And then they go back to school, and the next day Denji is a part of their devil hunting group. All in all, I really enjoyed this chapter. There was a lot of dialogue, but a lot of character building, a lot of sensitive emotions, a lot of identity being brought out and building them up together. I am incredibly worried for Yuko. I hope she doesn't die, but the more we build this seemingly genuine friendship that Asa and Yuko have, the more I believe it to potentially happen. It's only been 4 chapters, but seeing Asa so alive in a sense is incredible. You can see how curious and scared they are to open up to different people because she's never had friends before like that. So seeing Yuko be so optimistic and taking big chances and really, I guess, taking the lead of all of this situation comes off as overwhelming, but it's something that Asa kind of deep down appreciates, and you can tell on her facial expressions and kind of how nervous she is to accept things. She does ultimately accept it, but she's a bit shaky about the whole thing. I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant. I do have bad news, however, somewhat. The next chapter of Chainsaw Man Part 2 we will not be getting till the 16th of this month, so it's like 2 odd weeks away. The reason for that, I'm not entirely sure. There's supposedly a break that Jump Plus is or isn't affected by, I'm not sure, but also Fujimoto himself might be just taking a break. A lot of people are talking about the story changing to a regular scheduling. I don't know. There is no confirmation on that. I would just say that this is is a break, pretty lengthy one, to allow Fujimoto to rest or relax, whatever it may be, to gain resources, research, etc. But there's also, I believe, a legitimate break within Japan somewhere within there, and I don't think the schedule will change. Jump Plus allows their authors to take breaks and somewhat even encourages it, so this is a good thing. It's a little bit of a time to wait, but ultimately it's for the best for authors. It's a healthier schedule, and allowing to take breaks when you can is brilliant. I'm glad that they're pushing authors to do this. Some of the most successful stories that come out in the past recent years have irregular schedules, are not weekly stories, have breaks very often. I'm looking at you, Kaiju Number 8 and Spy Family, but they are beautifully crafted stories, and they do not adhere to the mainstream struggle of a weekly publication. Don't worry about the break. Next chapter is on the 16th. We'll see more of it then, and we'll continue to indulge with Chainsaw Man. With that, however, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.